Hey, in this video I'm going to go over how I set up my table saw for accurate cuts. Even though my table saw is homemade, I still set it up in exactly the same way as I would for any other saw. Okay, I've got a couple of tools here that I'm going to use. This is a kind of a depth gauge, and it fits in the miter slot and allows you to line that up with the blade. Now, I've also got a block of wood that I'm going to cut. And I've got a small square. This is a little plastic one that came with my miter saw. And it's good for checking the blade square to the table and the fence square to the table. The first step is to check to make sure that the miter slot and the blade are parallel. And to do that, I've made a little jig here. It's fairly simple. And that fits in the miter slot and is adjustable to go against the blade. What you want to do is wheel the blade up as high as it can go. It's a good idea to check to make sure that it's a clean blade, that it doesn't have any gum buildup on the side. Move it up so that it touches the first tooth. Then lock it in place, then slide it back and check it here. If it's different at the back than at the front, then you need to move the blade. That adjustment is different for different manufacturers. On my saw, I would take out the throat plate, loosen 2 bolts, and then I could move the motor housing. And that would align the blade to the miter slot. The next step after you've made that adjustment is to make sure that your fence is parallel to the miter slot. And you can use the same jig for that. What I'll do is I'll put it in the very start of the miter slot and I'll slide the fence over until it's just touching, and I'll lock it in place. And I'll slide the jig back and check it again, and it should be the same distance right across. If you find that your fence is not parallel to the slot, you'll have to adjust it, and the fence adjustment on different saws is different. So you'll have to follow the manufacturer's instructions for that also. On my saw, I have this nut that I'll just loosen, and then I'll move the fence rail in or out, and that'll adjust the fence parallel to the slot. Okay, now that we've established that all these things are parallel, next you'll check to make sure that your blade is square to the table when it's set at 90 degrees on your scale. Wheel the blade all the way up, and then use your square to check it. Now when you check this, you should make sure that the square is against the body of the blade and not touching a tooth. Or if there's any gummy buildup on the side of the tooth up here, you'll scrape it off before you check it. And then you do the same thing on your fence. Make sure that your fence is 90 degrees to your table. Fence adjustments for different manufacturers are different. On my saw, it's not actually there, but I meant to put it there. There was supposed to be a set screw on the top of the T-square here that I could tighten down to adjust the fence. What I found out with mine, once I had it made, it was actually pretty good after I built it, so I didn't have to do that. But that's the way you would adjust this type of fence. You would adjust the set screw on either side of the T. So with these basic settings complete, I'm going to move to setting the fence from the blade an accurate distance. You've got a pointer normally down here on your fence, and every time you change the blade or put a new blade in, you have to adjust this pointer. And you have to check to make sure that you have the right distance, so that when you set this to a measurement, that's actually what you're cutting. I have this block of hardwood. I'm just going to wheel the blade down. My saw sounds a little bit sick right now. Need some grease. And then I'm going to move this over until it reads 1 1/16. So with the saw set to 1 1/16, I'm going to cut this piece. Okay, with the piece cut, now I can measure it. Got calipers here. I'm going to turn those on and make sure they're zeroed. And then measure it, and I can see that I've got 1.084. 1/16 is 1.0625, so that means that I'm about 22 thousandths off. That means my fence has to come 22 thousandths closer to the blade. So I'm going to make a slight adjustment and recut the piece. Now I can measure it again. Make sure I'm zeroed. And here I've got 1.0675. You know, that's like 5 thousandths off. And for me, that's close enough. All I need to do is reset my pointer so that I'm exactly at 1 1/16. Now on my pointer, all I have to do is loosen these two screws, and then I can move the pointer. Now where I'm going to move the pointer is to the very center of the black mark, so that when I move the fence over and I want a precise cut of 1 1/16, the edge of this pointer is going to point to the very center of this thin mark. And then I'll tighten it in place. Now that everything's set up and the pointer's in the right spot, I can do a test cut on my block again. I'll set the saw for 1 inch. Now I'll make the cut. And measure it 996. 1 inch almost exactly, so 997. So that's within 10 thousandths, and that's where I want to be. I'm not shooting for any better accuracy on a table saw. So that's how I set up my saw. Like I said earlier, my saw is homemade, but the same procedures apply to every other table saw from $150 right up to $15,000. Accuracy is in the operator's hands for the most part. This jig that I use will be on my website in the tricks and tips section. It'll have the dimensions. It's a fairly simple jig. Doesn't take long to make, maybe 10 minutes or so. So that's all. Thanks for watching.